I guess the live streaming has started. Deeksha, good to go. We can start.
Good morning to one and all present here. On behalf of the Constitutional Club and Team Nivaran from the St. Joseph's College of Law, I, Diksha Garg, welcome you all to celebrate the 70th birth anniversary of our Constitution. The father of our Constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, once said, and I quote, that the Indian Constitution is a mere top dressing of equality on an Indian soil that is inherently unequal. In the unprecedented circumstances presented in face of the pandemic and the relics of the Indian history which is still held quite dear by most of our population, this statement is perhaps more true than ever. In midst of transgressions of regime and the prevalent socio-economic conditions, the relevance of constitution is often questioned time and again. Today, as students of law and citizens of this nation, we commemorate this day not only as a homage to the makers of this document, but also to remind ourselves why is it that the Constitution is termed as the grunt norm of this nation. Without further ado, I request our director, Father Praveen Hridayraj, to address the gathering.
Respected Principal Dr. Pratima Prabhakar, my dear faculty members, most distinguished keynote speaker for the day, Professor Kanchai Ilayya Shepherd, who is an Indian political theorist, writer, and activist, and my dear students. At the outset, let me congratulate the Constitution Club and Nivaran for taking needed initiative to observe Constitution Day and for selecting the theme Transformative Constitutionalism, the Promise and Reality. Thanks to our faculty coordinators, Mr. Gio Verghese and Ms. Pauline Priya, and for student coordinators, Ms. Diksha Garg and Mr. Zoil, and other students who have taken efforts to organize this event. They also conducted the point of order competition. Congratulations to the winners. The unveiling of Conscientia, the legal awareness law, and releasing of video on Constitution is something which St. Joseph's College of Law can take pride of. Thank you very much, dear students. Dear faculty members and students, kindly continue the good, noble work of spreading the knowledge and awareness and Constitution to the general public. Dear students, Constitution Day on November 26th, similar to other days of national importance, has become another day of ritualistic celebration without much critical introspection. The significance of Constitution Day is not in the explicit ritualistic reverence to the supreme legal document, but in critical introspection of our progress in fulfilling the basic ideology of a constitution. The constitution makers' clarity of thought in creating a just society is clearly reflected in the founding philosophy of constitution. Dr. Ambedkar said, it is possible that in future, even the concept of parliamentary democracy may be questioned, or the sanctity of fundamental rights may be diluted. Yet there is something in the very core or the idea of constitutional democracy that should remain unchanged or that needs to be preserved. The danger to India's democracy, well articulated by Ambedkar in his final speech to the Constituent Assembly. On the event of the formal adoption of the Constitution, Ambedkar said that he was filled with anxiety because, in addition to the division of caste and creed, we are going to have many political parties with their own creed. He famously said, "Will Indians place country over creed or creed over country?" In addition, Dr. Ambedkar mentioned three major dangers to the functioning of a democracy. The first was adherence to the constitutional methods. Here, there is simply no room for civil disobedience, non-cooperation, or satyagraha, all of which may have worked well to overthrow British Raj. Ambedkar was referring to Gandhi's methods and saying that these had no place in constitutional democracy. The second danger was the politics of pedestal. For the maintenance of democracy, he said that Indians cannot lay their liberties at the feet of even a great man, or to trust him with powers which enables him to subvert their institution. He said that hero worship in politics was a real danger in India. He said, Bhakti in religion may be a road to the salvation of the soul, but in politics, Bhakti or hero worship is a sure road to degradation and to eventual dictatorship. Ambedkar's third warning was inconsistency between political equality on one hand and extreme social and economic inequality on the other hand. If this contradiction was not addressed urgently, those who suffer from inequality will blow up the edicts of democracy, he warned. Ambedkar also added, caste is ultimately anti-national because it brings separation in social life. Quoting Lincoln, he said that a house divided itself cannot stand alone. Dear students, defending the Constitution is always challenging and entails suffering. Professor Kanchaya Illaidal is a real example to that. On this day, we are commemorating the Constitution. We should not forget that the suffering of human rights and defenders of Constitution whose sacrifice will not be easy. The path is not easy under such circumstances, but we are soldiers of the Constitution. We are bound by the Constitution. It gives us liberty, a power that gives us strength to speak freely against injustice. This day reminds us about liberty, unity, and freedom of expression. Hence, we should promote an inclusive India where all are in front of the law. We must ponder over Ambedkar's prophetic words and how strong is the fidelity to constitutional principle. Here too, his words are great guide. He said that ultimately the working of a constitution depends on the people and political parties. A good constitution, such as India's, can be undermined by those who are its guardian and responsible for its working. And a bad constitution can turn out to be good if people who are called to make it work are good. The constitution itself is a dynamic, living, changing, and nourishing document. But its working and benefits to society depends on us, the people upholding it. Do we measure up? Time to introspect, keeping in mind the pending cases in the country, that is 3.61 crores. where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is key, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by domestic, where words come out from the depth of truth into that heaven of freedom. My Father led my country away. Today we have the enlightened, distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Arthur Elijah Shepherd, who will bring us and lead us from untruth to truth, from darkness to light. He is a living legend, a prophet, a human rights activist, and a great defender of a constitution. He is the real good shepherd of a constitution. We are eager to listen to sir. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Happy Constitution Day.
Thank
God
you.
bless us all.
Thank you so much, Father, for your kind and enlightening words. As a part of the Constitution Day celebration, the Constitution Club of our college had organized an event on the 25th of November 2020. I request our principal, Dr. Pratima Prabhakar, to announce the result and also to unveil the college blog Consentia, the legal awareness blog.
Thank you, Deeksha. Good morning, all. Respected Reverend Father Praveen Hudaraj, the eminent speaker for today's webinar, Professor Kanchalaya Shepherd, the Vice Principal of SJCL, Mrs. Pauline Priya, faculty and student coordinators of both the clubs, esteemed faculty members, dear students. Once again, a very warm welcome to one and all. As you all know, India celebrated 71st anniversary of Constitution Day on 26 November 2020. This day marks a historical significance as Constitution Day or Samvidhan Divas, also known as National Law Day, which is celebrated in India on 26 November every year to commemorate the adoption of the Constitution of India on 26 November 1949, which came into effect on 26 January 1950. It was on this day India marked its journey as independent and sovereign republic. This day is a tribute to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who played the crucial role in framing the Constitution of India. The Constitution Day of India aims to bring awareness to the importance of the Indian Constitution and its chief architect, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. In the very words of Dr. Ambedkar, men are mortal, so are ideas. An idea needs propagation as much as a plant needs watering. Otherwise, both will wither and die. Understanding the Constitution and the provision thereto is not only indispensable to law students but to all the citizens, and we have to have frequent discourses, especially on our Constitution, which will remind us that our life is safe and secured only if we respect and uphold the dignity of the supreme law of the country, the Constitution. Again, I would like to repeat what our Reverend Father has already said, Director, in the words of Ambedkar again. However good a constitution may be, if those who are implementing it are not good, it will prove to be bad. However bad a constitution may be, if those implementing it are good, it will prove to be good. Hence, it becomes important for every citizen to be educated, organized, and being agitated when the provisions of a constitution are being misused by some greedy authorities. STSL intends to act as a catalyst to spread awareness and understanding within the institution and outside about the constitution of our nation. However, understanding of the constitution can be achieved only with intense reading coupled with rigorous deliberations on the intricacies of the law. To facilitate this object, today we are also inaugurating the legal awareness block handled by our enlightened, socially and legally conscious students of STCL. We are indeed very proud of them. On this wonderful occasion, I am glad to announce the winners of the Point of Order event conducted recently by the STCL Constitution Club. The first prize goes to Nikita Sampath, second BA LLB A section. The first prize goes to Nikita Sampath. She belongs to second BA LLB A section. And second prize to TS Timmaya, second BBA LLB. And third prize goes to Shrivanika, yes, first BA LLB A section. Hearty congratulations to all the participants as well as the winners. I wish a great success to both the clubs and its coordinators. We are indeed honored today to have the opportunity of listening to a very renowned activist and academician par excellence, Professor Kanchalaya Shepherd. and I take great pleasure in declaring the Legal Awareness SJCL block to be open for this academic year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Students, please note that further information regarding the blog as well as the links for the website will be available shortly via the class rep group. We have with us today Professor Kanchaleya Shepherd to address the students on the realities of the Indian Constitution. I call upon Mrs. Pauline Priya, a Vice Principal, to formally introduce the Speaker of the Day.
Good morning to one and all present. Respected Director, Father Praveen Hridayaraj, respected Principal, Dr. Pratima Prabhakar, our guest speaker for today, Professor Kanchaleya. It gives me immense pleasure and privilege to introduce the speaker for today's session. Professor Kanchaleya, an author and activist par excellence. Professor Ilayya has an MA degree in political science from Osmani University, Hyderabad, and an MPhil awarded for his study of land reform in South Indian state of Andhra Pradesh. He was awarded with a PhD degree for his work titled Political Thought of Gautama Buddha. Later, it was published in the form of a book titled God as a Political Philosopher, Buddha's Challenge to Brahmanism. He has been a recipient of the Mahatma Jyotirao Phule Award and was a Nehru Fellow between the years 1994 and 97. While working as a professor of the Department of Political Science at Osmani University, he also bagged the Lisa Award for his magnum opus, Why I Am Not a Hindu. In 2012, he retired from the Osmani University after 3 glorious decades of research and teaching. Among the very many accomplishments Sir has to his credit, besides being a prolific writer, Sir has also held offices of prominence. He has been the director of the Center of Study for Social Exclusion and Inclusion Policy at Maulana Azad National Urdu University, Hyderabad, a position that he holds presently. Formerly, he has also been a member of the National Research Committee constituted by the Ministry of Social Justice, New Delhi. He is a member of the Indian Council of Social Science Research, New Delhi. He was a former member of the National Book Trust Ministry of Human Resources Development, Government of India, New Delhi for 3 years, a member of the Planning Commission Subcommittee to formulate an agenda for land reforms for the 5-year plan, member of the UGC Constitutional Committee to oversee the implementation of the OBC reservation in all central and state universities in India. He has also been a former member of the Executive Council of the Periyar Maniamma University, Tamil Nadu. Sir, it is a privilege to have you with us. Most often in my constitution classes, I have cited many of your works to help our students understand some disturbing ground realities that have ridden India ever since and before independence. We look forward eagerly to hearing from you, sir. Request you to address the students.
Thank you, Priya, for that very gracious introduction. Let me at the outset thank the director and the principal and the rest of the organizers of St. Joseph College of Law. This lecture on transformative constitutionalism, the premise and reality in the context of the 70th birthday of Indian Constitution, which is a great event for those of us who were born after the Constitution was adopted, because the lives of people, those who were born under this Constitution and those who were born before this Constitution was created was fundamentally different. The birth of this constitution gave a feeling, an emotional attachment to not only the Indian nation, but for the life and future. Because earlier, for millennia, there were deep inequalities of caste, untouchability, women's degradation, including massive child marriage systems, sati, permanent widowhood, many such horrendous things that existed in India. Not that India was a country of no religion before, or that structure of religions changed later significantly. India was a country of many religions even before the constitution was adopted. It was, to start with, a country of great Harappan civilization where people believed that there was one God who have created all people equal. Then came the Vedic era, where four Varna system was constructed. The largest producing people, the cattle rearing people, the economic system builders called Shudras were rendered slaves. Now the problem continued till Gautam Buddha arose. In between, there was Vardhaman Mahavira, who has introduced another dimension to Indian life called pure vegetarianism. But Indian life, from building up Harappan civilization to 7th century BC, was a multi-cuisine food with human survival as main target. Now, thereafter, a lot of contradictions emerged, and Gautam Buddha emerged out of these contradictions. And he again restored Indian life to what he famously called Bahujan Hitaya, Bahujan Sukhaya. That equality of human beings was an essential character of his Sangha system, and women were also admitted. Castes were abolished within the Sangha. Now then came, unfortunately, monarchical systems which went far and wide and backwards and forwards. But in between came the Ashokan pro-Buddhist kingdom, where the first agrarian revolution got initiated. The wheel was initiated then. Now thereafter a counter-revolution came with what is known as the Pushpamitra Shunga's counter-revolution. And during this period, two important texts were written. One became a statecraft text. The other one was considered to be the constitution of the Varna. One was Kautilya's Arthashastra. The second one was Manu Dharma Shastra. So, in the background of the four Varna division literature, both Kautilya's Arthashastra and Manu's Dharma Shastra laid down theories of state and society and religion on a non-universal ground. I'm using the concept non-universal because at that time systems were equally evolved in China. Systems were far more evolved in Israel and Egypt. But what went into Indian making was that, unlike the Chinese, and the Israelites, and even the Egyptians, and the Greek older civilization, India, based on the Varna system, institutionalized a political and legal dimension based on its own spiritual thought that God did not create all human beings equal. Whereas the rest of the world, the Chinese, whether it is Taoism or Confucianism or later Buddhism that went there, or the Greek thought, or more fundamentally the Israelite evolution, was on the premise that God created all human beings equal. Now, that does not mean they all implemented that idea of God's equal creation in the political and legal dimensions of the kingships. Religions also did not respect that philosophy for a long time. Even Christianity was not implementing the idea of God creating all human beings equal with authenticity. But structurally in India, Kautilya's Arthashastra and Manudharma were antithetical to God creating all human beings equal. Because the students of Constitution of India or of the world must understand the main source of evolution of constitutions and democracy is in the idea of God creating all human beings equal. Because if that idea were not there, the idea of liberty, equality, fraternity would not have come in. Because my view today is that even now, human mind is more governed and controlled by the idea of God as they understand than by the state and the law. Now that is the reason why religious fundamentalisms, very rigid spiritual values, and once God is said to have commanded in a particular way, people behave in accordance with that, whether there is violence, brutality, or human peace. Now, given this character of the world and spiritual control, we must look at Constitution. Most unfortunate tragic history of India is that by the time we started freedom struggle, India was governed by 3-4 major spiritual ideas. One was the Vedic, the Kautilya Manudharma structure within the civil society. The state was in the hands of the British, who had Bible as their spiritual texts, but they very rigidly separated, at least within this country as a colonial state, between the idea of God creating all human beings equal and the Indian colonized. We are treated as unequals, no doubt. And there was a huge presence of Islam as a ruling religion immediately preceding the British East India Company arrival here through the Mughal system. Now, by then, 3 languages were our ruling languages. Historically, Sanskrit was the ruling language of India. The rules, the laws, the communications were going through Sanskrit. But with the advent of Islamic rule, by 13th century and 14th century, Persian language has become the ruling language. So, from that period to 1834, Persian language was the ruling language. Now, from 1834, English became the ruling language. Now, most tragically, the majority of Indians, the Shudras, who constitute in Karnataka context Lingayat, Vaklingayat, or Tamil Nadu, Nayakas, or Udaliyas, Reddys, Kamas, Jats, Gujars, Patels, down to the Adivasis. 85 to 90% of people did not know these 3 languages. They were not supposed to learn Sanskrit, they were not taught Persian, and they were not taught English till date. Till today, English is the preserve of very few Dvijas and few Christian leaders, institutions, and a small section of Muslims, but not Shudras. Now, I feel I am in a way fortunate to have been born around 1952, because by then an unexpected accident took place. That was the accident of birth of Ambedkar in this country, in an untouchable family. And the Shudra rulers, who were dead scared of Brahmin priests, somehow sent him to study in US and then England, and he became a multi-subject expert, which was not possible in those days for many people. But he became an economist, he became a philosopher, and more than anything, he became a legal expert. And the second major accident was, for whatever reasons, Gandhi and Nehru allowed him to write the Indian Constitution. These are accidents, not a definite pathways that led us to adopting this kind of constitution. Otherwise, the constitution would have been completely different, because we should not forget the fact that even now, even in the ruling forces, there are many, in fact, majority of the ruling forces today think that this constitution is not suitable to you. It did not adhere to the principles of Manudharma Shastra and state directions given by Kautilya and other Varnadharmic ideologies. But this constitution gave us the idea of all human beings equal. That Ambedkar was saying repeatedly, wherefrom he drew this idea of Indian liberty, equality, fraternity. Because if you remember, the first written constitution came up in America. And the source for that, if you read Jefferson's writings, is the idea of God creating all human beings equal. Now, this idea they drew from Bible, the first chapter of Genesis. Because even when I read that, I was surprised that the idea that God is a worker for 7 days, 6 days, and he was tired at the end of the 6th day in creating the world as it is now we are living, and the 7th day he took rest. God was operating like a scientific man there. So the idea of all human beings created equal is the fundamental governing principle of American Constitution. It is that which really now set aside Donald Trump. That the right wing supremacism in America was crossing the borders within 4 years. And the blacks and the Hispanics and the women were facing the wrath. Then the electoral debates were around the whole idea of God creating all human beings equal. It is from there the emergence of a person like Obama happened. So now in India, all law students must understand Ambedkar, with a great struggle, he was working on a razor blade actually, mediating between various interests, which are fundamentalist, which are anti-constitutional. Even the whole of the Islamic world was not based on constitution by then. So he avoided 3 dictatorships in writing this constitution. This you can refer to my articles, how Ambedkar avoided 3 dictatorships in the Wire. The first dictatorship was the Varnadharma dictatorship. That no Shudra can become a prime minister or a king without the Brahmin priest giving them formal Kshatriyahood. And no king could do that. Even Shivaji could not avoid that. The terrible fear of Brahmin as God on the earth was shaking every king. So he avoided the Varnadharma dictatorship. The second major dictatorship was all around us at that time was the proletariat dictatorship of the communist ideology. Soviet Union, China, Eastern Europe. So the idea of proletariat dictatorship, as I say, the idea of proletariat dictatorship in India would have been Brahminic dictatorship from communist fold. That he could avoid. The third is the Islamic version of mullah dictatorship. Because the battle between the Congress and the Jinnah forces, Muslim League, had its own historical basis, but both of them were looking for their own dictatorships. Now, because there was no sort of Ambedkar kind of legal luminary with a deep historical understanding to write a constitution in Pakistan, within a very short time it went into the hands of dictators. India would have gone that way, but for Ambedkar, and to some extent definitely Nehru, who ruled for almost 17 years, who had a commitment to liberty, equality, fraternity with his own understanding. And Gandhi, who by then passed away but left a kind of legacy which has very problematic things. So Ambedkar navigated this by avoiding 3 dictatorships, and these dictatorships are not out of our horizon. They're still around. Now, therefore, when we read Indian Constitution, we must read with the background that this is a constitution written for a country with a background of Manudharma constitution, which is haunting us every day. All of us were fighting to remove Manu's statue in Rajasthan High Court, but there are forces they don't want. Burning books is not the thing. Oh, Ambedkar burned Manudharma, but it does not take away the text. Burning doesn't take away text. Text will remain. So what we need to do is use this constitution, create an idea with a strong spiritual morality in the back of this. If there is no spiritual morality, what was the fear of Ambedkar? A good constitution, if implemented by bad people, will again go backward. Now, what is this bad and good? After all, these are subjective concepts. The bad here in India is that there is no spiritual morality in the Varna system. That all people are not treated as equally created people by God. Whether they sit in universities, whether they sit in judicial institutions, whether they sit in parliament, there is this mind, God created Indians unequal. Now with this mind, the majority, those who suffered with this principle, the Shudras, the Dalits, the OBC, what we call Dalits and Adivasis, are not in these institutions even today because they don't have English. Unfortunately, the Christian institutions, which establish the best of the institutions like St. Stephen's, Xavier's, Joseph's, and Loyola's, educated only those who think that God did not create all people equal. So the victims, the slaves, are not given this national and international language, thereby entering into really grasping the constitution, which is drafted in English only. Now that is a very important tool to understand. So if you look at this in the present global situation, in the present Indian situation, the major challenge of the future young girls and boys, I'm using girls and boys because girls will have more problems in future than boys. Because the patriarchy of India is more brutal than in any other country in the world, including African. You don't see so many children's deaths so many child rapes, so many wife murders, so many gang rapes of Nirbhaya type or of the Hyderabad or UP type in Africa. So in China, in Europe, this kind of, because there is a human dimension which is also a spiritual, a social upbringing of the child, that woman is a human being, child, the girl child is a human being. And don't forget the fact, India has a huge ideology of indignity of labor. Now, the Constitution expects us to teach dignity of labor. I don't know how many law colleges teach students the law of dignity of labor. When you don't teach the law of dignity of labor, then even our lawyers think that lawyers and judges, everybody thinks that shoemaking, tilling the land, cloth washing, or food production or pollutions are untouchable activities. Only desk work, only speech, because speeches were not supposed to be given by Shudras earlier. Or, prayers or priests, these are supposed to be non-productive works, are supposed to be divine. Who will get moksha? I just wrote an article, Caste in Heaven, which is published in Mainstream and Countercurrent jointly. The idea of heaven and hell are very strong among Indians also in the village. Whether they are idol worshippers, whether they are Shudras. But how does a man or a woman get equality without getting equality here, the right to priesthood, the right to dignity to your work, whether you do shoe, you make pot, you look after sheep, goat, whatever, how do you go to heaven if these activities are sins? They are considered to be sins, and every one of the Shudra, Dalit, Adivas is a sinner permanent, and they don't realize it. They never. So non-productive forces are non-sinners. Okay. How does this happen? In which spiritual text, spiritual law this came from? So Constitution is running against it all the time. So I expect St. Joseph College to introduce a course on law of dignity of labor. Because if law colleges don't teach using the same constitution, the fundamental way. For example, I was asking a very fundamental question before a commission headed by Justice Verma when we were taking caste to Durban in 2001, when they were saying that no, caste is not equal to race. So race is, black, white, and so on. We are not treating black, white as opponent or lesser or higher colors. I asked him one question. And I'm asking you, the law teachers and the law students. The Indian Constitution, with the intervention of Mahatma Gandhi, of course, in the preamble said, in the directive principles, it said, all bovine animals, more particularly cows, should be protected. Based on this, the anti-cow laws, ban of beef, and then the launch of Indian heritage as a vegetarian nation, picking up from Vartaman Mahavira, because there are Jains here who believe that those who eat meat will not go to Swarga. But there is no other religion in the world which treats food like that. Food has nothing to do with purity, impurity, and so on. So beef and meat are about to be banned in India, which is a 60% of the food resource. Now, how do Adivasis, Dalits, Shudras who eat from the day of Harappan city civilization or Indo-African migration in the first wave to present survive with multi-cushion food? If you go on saying that meat eaters will not go to heaven, now what does it mean? So this is the kind of thing. So I asked Justice Verma, tell me, you are saying we don't go by colors. Why buffalo is not mentioned in the directive principles of state policy as a protected animal? And by then I wrote my book, Buffalo Nationalism. And India drinks more buffalo milk than cow milk. Only India drinks buffalo milk. And I said, why it was not in the direct? Now assume that a fine morning buffalo walks into your Supreme Court when you were Chief Justice of the court and asks for equal right with cow. What would you say? Perhaps you would have said, how did this buffalo get into my court? Perhaps you might have thought that, the court was polluted by buffalo's entry. You would have dismissed the watch and ward for that. Maybe if there's a very conservative, they would have washed the whole court with the same buffalo milk to clean it. This is the mindset. Now, if buffalo is not equal to cow, no Dalit, no Shudra, no Adivasi is equal to Brahmin. Do you know that? Because buffalo is a black animal, you don't equate it in the Constitution. Because Gandhi's cow is white animal, you treat it superior. This is the problem. Therefore, the Indian law students must learn that till all colors become equal, you must adopt the principle that black is more beautiful than white. This is must. I don't want my people to suffer inequality even in color. So the law is now, you all know that judiciary has the final word. Whatever Supreme Court says is the final. Whatever Parliament says is not the final. Whatever Supreme Court says is the final. Of course, this is worldwide. Division of powers has come about like that. Even Trump thought that American Supreme Court will save him, say that he won the election. But luckily they did not do it. Or even the local state Supreme Courts did not do that. But today Indian Supreme Court is final. Now if the Supreme Court, people who are sitting there have this mentality, then naturally law of equality does not apply. Whatever could be the constitution. Now that is the reason why you can see the judgment coming recently. The right wing gets immediate access to courts. The left or liberals have access based on their own ideology in the courts. Look at the way. So this is because you sit there with your childhood training, with your roots in the caste, community, family. Therefore, the judiciary has to have people with all caste backgrounds. But for that, English is the problem. Unless English becomes the teaching medium of instruction in government schools, all caste people cannot reach to Supreme Court. This is a very, very, why only Balakrishnan Dalit from Kerala will go there, a Chief Justice? Because they had English education for a long time. So it is in this context, the premise of the Constitution is to negate the idea of God creating Indians unequal. The idea of caste is natural. The idea of women's inequality is natural. The idea of indignity of labor is natural. So the reality is that this has not yet gone. We have a constitution, and there is a possibility of completely dismantling this constitution by those who think that Manodharma constitution should come back. Because they have a constitutional frame. Not that they don't have. Other countries don't have a constitution. Nobody says Bible is a constitution. Nobody says Quran is a constitution. Though they say that the Islamic Sharia law is a law. Now that is where Islamic world has its own problems. But I have not heard in the Christian world or the communist world has its own constitutional frame, which they constantly change based on the leader who emerges there. That's not, fortunately, we may not move towards that, but we may definitely move towards the Manodharma constitution coming back. Then we will be far more backward than many Asian countries. Today, we thought that we will be equal to China, but today, in the world, nobody considers us. We are really going down and down and down because ideologically, our welfare, our democracy, our very idea of preamble of the Constitution and its philosophy is being spoken about by some people, but they are basically against it. So, to catch up with China and to challenge it so that it does not occupy our nation, we have to really safeguard this constitution and introduce new courses in law, in social sciences. Our social science and legal system is weakest in the world. In America, most presidents are lawyers. That's how Kamala Harris comes now. But they go outside and become great libertarians and they become ministers and vice president there. Back home, they do not recognize caste and inequality and they don't want English to all. So my feeling is that as students, let us realize that all children must learn two languages, English and regional language. All children must have equal access to equal syllabus. Universities have to create new syllabuses around these 4-5 ideas I was talking about. Dignity of labor has to be central. Equality of language has to be central. And negation of the old values, whether they came from the so-called Vedic tradition or Islamic tradition or Christian tradition, I don't bother. But we need to negate. So once this happens, the Constitution will be on a sounder footing and we will safeguard. And Ambedkar's vision, based on the Buddhist idea, Buddha believed in a very strong theory that all human beings are equal, though he did not believe in God. He himself became God later. So all human beings are equal. In his discourses, if you read my book, God as Political Philosopher, which every law student must read to know the ancient India, there he established fundamental principles of ancient Indian egalitarianism and democracy and property distribution and the question of dignity of labor and women's equality on sound footing. And that is where Ambedkar drew certain ideas of the Constitution. And without a proper background, if you study Constitution, you can't make any sense of it. So I hope, I'm glad the principle is there, women, and there are many women teachers I can see here, and some of your institutions are the best. But make it a point. Create best Adivasi, Dalit, Shudra, OBC lawyers from your institutions. Even if financially you suffer something, I don't mind. But the Dvija class has really done enough damage by learning English now, by learning Sanskrit earlier, and Persian in the middle. But these forces thought that they have to till the land and survive or rule the villages. This is all backwardness on their part. We have to bring them on same level of language and thought, idea, and constitutional understanding. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I would be happy to take if there are questions. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Professor, for addressing a few hundred students who are currently watching us over YouTube where the event is being live streamed. Also, for addressing our faculty coordinators who are presently there in the meeting. There have been questions which have been raised on the YouTube comment box, and I request all the viewers to key in their questions there, and we will pose it to Sir. Sir, first question being, could you please give the citations for how the proletarian dictatorship is Brahmanical? Historically, communist revolutions are built on the premise of all humans being equal, which is the exact reason why communist countries go on to become the torchbearers in women's rights. Historically, revolutions have also included portions of land reform and undivided proletariats.
Well, you just read my article in Wired, Ambedkar and the three dictatorships. And in most of my writings, see, without communists recognizing caste and understanding that this country had a history before the British came. I came from communist background. All communist parties' programs start with colonialism. And they think that but for the colonials coming here, India would have become capitalist like Europe. They say much better than European. But they did not understand that the caste capital in India would not have allowed that, the Baniya capital. So communist parties were headed by Brahmins right from P.C. Joshi to present even Sitaram Yechuri. And they refused to recognize the caste system. And I have written several articles asking CPM to include a Dalit and an Adivasi in their Politburo. Till today, they are not there. So therefore, my thinking is that analysis that India is a society of class is absolutely Brahmanic. It is not a society of class. It is primarily a society of caste. And the proletarian dictatorship would have been headed by the Brahmin top leaders, like Lenin or Mao as secretary and so on. And they would not have abolished caste. That's what Ambedkar fear was also. You read Ambedkar's Buddha and Karl Marx. That will give you some clarity.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question is posed by one of our students. Professor, the Indian Constitution was adopted nearly 70 years back. From then on, there has been a lot of change which has happened in the socio-economic realities. Do you think that the Constitution of India also needs a change and to adopt new principles?
Well, always change towards a progressive, democratic, egalitarian idea is welcome. We have been doing amendments, no doubt, from time to time. For example, the OBC reservation was not allowed first, then it did. But all changes should be with towards a wall poster. The wall poster is equality. If changes move towards equality, there is a good dimension. For example, if a constitution is now amended to allow the multinational companies to start their own banks, what will happen? Already, the entire capital is arrested in the hands of three communities. And they have no philanthropic view of Indian population. Let thousands die starved, let millions die in any calamity, they don't spend a single pie. So we don't have a history of philanthropy treating our neighbor as neighbor, but we treat our neighbor as another caste person. When this system is there, change of the constitution can take us backwards, or it can take us forward towards equality. So my idea is it should be towards equality. Keep a poster on the wall before you all the time. All of us are equal, and equality is my God.
Thank you, sir. So another question posed by one of our students is that after the partition, Muslim political influence in India was a spent force. More than half of their co-religionists had migrated to Pakistan. In that context, how can you suggest that a mullah dictatorship posed a threat to a young India?
No. When Ambedkar was drafting, I was conjecturing that he had three things in mind about the Muslim world, because he has already written a book on partition, Pakistan and partition of India. He examined the Muslim question. So the Muslim world, by then, today there are 56 countries, but at that time, there may be about 30 or 35 countries, I don't know. But all of them have not come into democracy as a system. So their historical evolutionary idea was the economic laws or the state laws as well. Therefore, they have several structures which are not outside the religious framework of life. Whereas the Western democracies have not foregrounded for everything Bible as the ruling text. They have taken certain ideas from Bible. In fact, there was a huge debate from the days of John Locke to Hegel about Hegel himself wrote a biography of Jesus Christ and reinterpreted Jesus Christ in many ways as he sees that he is a rational embodiment. So this has not happened in the Muslim world. Therefore, given the encirclement of the Muslim countries in the Western would be one idea. Second one, by 1947, India had about 30% Muslim population. And most of the top leaders of Muslims were also upper caste converts. Jinnah was a Baniya convert from Gujarat. People say, I read somewhere that he was a distant relative of Gandhi's. And Allama Iqbal was a Brahmin convert in Kashmir. So many rich Muslims were Rija converts. And they were England educated and so on, feudals. And given this, even now, I have a suspicion that if we don't, if the Islamic world does not reform itself and come to political democracy in a massive way, I cannot answer. That is the problem. And after partition, I guess they are not in a position to become prime ministers now, and they were not allowed later also. But this possibility is very much, because even today, except Turkey and Pakistan back and forth, even Bangladesh with a weak prime ministerial democracy, and Malaysia, not much Muslim world is engaged with democracy.
Thank you, sir. Another question posed by one of our faculty members is regarding the idea of God being the governing factor in human mind. How can we make sense of this when caste is present across all religions? Even Kantian philosophy that espouses moral categoricalism is able to justify racism and colonialism. Isn't that because ideas, including God, share a dialectical relationship with materiality?
Well, I've been thinking about this. I wrote somewhere this sentence that even now, particularly after observing the whole Muslim world when they fast during Ramadan. And I was teaching in a Muslim university. There were a lot of men and women. Which law or which state can force them to fast from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock? All of them at one go, if it were not to be God. If it were to be a state, I don't think they would have avoided that. Now, secondly, I constantly think about the Shudra, OBC, Dalits. They accept Hinduism as a religion, and they are working. And in fact, they played major roles in many movements that Hindutva forces also conducted, including demolition of Babri Masjid. But they never asked for priesthood in the same temple. They think that it is theirs. Even the kings. If they are part of the religion, if your individual right to become the theologian, the philosopher, the priest, how do you engage with God from near, from close quarters thinking? Oh. Now, this bound them the theory of karma, established by Brahmanism through God. Now, this is given to you by God. As of now, my book is coming out, The Shudras, A Vision for a New Path by Bengaluru by February next year. How did this big mass people don't ask for equality in religion? So there is the fear injected into them by the priest, and that fear hangs around them. Now, in the Christian world and in China, where there was an anti-God campaign in the communist countries, but all of them are reshaping around religion. In the Christian world also, you see after 9/11, huge repositioning of mind around God. Now, lot of repositioning of mind. Now, that is the reason why I was watching how would Joe Biden face the right-wing Christians who were mostly supporting Trump. Joe Biden started repeatedly saying, God created all of us. Now, he is appealing to Americans through God more than the Constitution. So there is a mind that still listens to God more. So this we need to engage. After Hegelian thought and Marxism, we had gone through a philosophical phase, but there is a reshaping of spiritual and social and legal pillars. I think most of us should think and write about this. I'm not saying that this is 100% true, but this is my conjecture. Otherwise, how does this happen?
Thank you, sir. And this will be the last question due to the paucity of time. Sir, what is your opinion on the argument used by anti-reservation activists who state that reservations are against meritocracy?
Well, see, I have been arguing and writing about it in numerous articles. What is the merit in not touching the soil to produce food? If certain set of children are made to mug up a text, repeat it, they will learn that more easily than those who did not mug up or those who did not have the right to read the text at all. So now those who are opposing reservation for Shudra, Dalit, OBCs, who are food producers, who are sustainers of this nation, you see in the pandemic, which force of India kept us surviving in pandemic? When software industries shut down, when urban industries shut down, when labor was walking back to villages, it is the agriculture. Now the Vijay forces who write this, no Shudra, no Dalit, no OBC in the country, argued that reservation is anti-merit. It is they who do not produce anything. They think that these people don't understand their logic. They understand if only when they remove reservation they will understand what this Shudra, Dalit, Adivasis, when Jats, Gujars, Patels, Lingayat, Vakalinga, Nayars, all Shudras at one go understand this whole game, then they will realize what is that they're talking. Absolute nonsense. I've been saying one thing. Let English medium be the teaching medium for all children for 25 years in government and private schools with equal syllabus, equal infrastructure. Then after 25 years, let reservation be removed. We will see who will be where. We will see who will be where. I know what my English brought to me. And I did not study this English in St. Stephen in Delhi, St. Joseph, or in Xavier, or in England, or in America. I studied under the tree with a conviction. And this English has put them in a box. Without that English, I would have been nothing but a shepherd going beyond my sheep, even though I am Telugu educated, behind my sheep. But I know now how to educate these people because I know how to educate sheep also. These are absolute nonsensical, illiterate arguments. And once all Shudras, including the upper Shudras who are supporting them now, will realize, they will shift the argument. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for patiently answering all our questions. I am sure our students as well as faculty members would have had much to gain from today's talk. The talk by Professor Kancha Ilaya raises more questions than it answers with respect to the relevance of the Constitution today. It is amply clear that there is a need for us to introspect as well as to scrutinize the manifestation of constitutional norms as well as values. In line with this, the students of the Constitutional Club and members of the Team Nivaran have prepared a short video which will now be displayed.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially.
It's a small technical
At
issue.
the
It will be
stroke of
visible
the
in 2
midnight
minutes.
hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. A moment comes, which comes but rarely in history, when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends, and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance.
Here we go again. Another day in another year. Another ritualistic celebration of a day that is about our founding document. 71 years is a long time. Well, if you're born in this generation, as a millennial or a zoomer, that is.
The video is being live
A
streamed on
lot
YouTube.
of things have
For some
happened
reason,
since
it's not being
1949.
shown in the Teams app.
We sent the
So
British
the
back in
streaming
for
is
good.
happening live on YouTube.
We came out
So
with our
I'm
own
not sure.
constitution.
Okay.
Universal adult franchise became a thing. The federal court became a Supreme Court. High courts came up in new states and union territories. A whole lot of basic fundamental rights were recognized as being intrinsic to the lives of the average citizen. The emergency happened in 1975 and effectively suspended habeas corpus in the ADM Jabalpur case, among other things. It ended. The executive excesses of the past were challenged. The Honorable Supreme Court in the Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India case affirmed that a law depriving a person of personal liberty has not only to stand the test of Article 21, but also Article 14 and Article 19. Basically, we established for ourselves a system that would, in its most idealistic understanding, try to treat all Indians equally. In December 2019, the Citizenship Amendment Bill was tabled in Parliament. This was preceded by a whole litany of acts that were questioned on constitutional grounds. The 2019 amendments to the Right to Information Act, the bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir, so on and so forth. But these were acts pushed by malignant interests, bureaucrats, and the government. Right? Right? Between 2010 to 2017, 63 cow vigilante acts happened in India, resulting in the deaths of 28 people and left 124 injured. And these are the reported numbers. Many of these incidents were carried out by mobs, a blatant disregard for Article 21. Untouchability, which was abolished by the Constitution in Article 17, is also a thing of the past, right? Why is it that in rural India, social boycotts and untouchability is the lived reality of countless citizens? Our founding fathers made a constitution consisting of 395 articles, 12 schedules in 22 parts, the lengthiest one in the world. The men who gave us our constitution did not intend it to be a random collection of laws, but a guiding book that would prevent one group of people from dominating another. Freedom, justice, and equality were some of the ideas that our founding fathers wanted the document to uphold. Well, it sounds like a mixed record at best. As distressing as some of our realities appear to be today, nearly 70 years ago, our leaders saw a ray of hope. After all, millions of people were moved by a higher cause. This optimism is best expressed in our preamble. It not only establishes the power structure of the country, but also lays down the ultimate objective and goals that the Constitution aims to achieve. The powerful images of young protesters using the preamble to articulate their dissent earlier this year goes to show that its words still mean something. As a defender of the rights of the people, the higher courts have delivered, upholding civil liberties time and again. Not so long ago. Okay, well, quite some time ago. The judgment that was delivered in the Keshavnanda Bharti case reaffirmed the idea that the basic structure of the Constitution cannot be altered. Even in the recent judgments of Section 377 and 497, which decriminalized homosexuality in the country and adultery, the Honorable Supreme Court furthered the cause of individual freedom and privacy. In the judgment that read down Section 377 of the IPC, Justice Chandrachud emphasized that constitutional morality and not societal morality will decide the validity of Section 377. Section 377 is unconstitutional. The judgment played a crucial role in establishing that constitutional morality supersedes the societal construct. From the Aadhaar judgment to adultery, the Constitution has aided common citizens against the transgressions of those in power. Are our rights better secured than before? And are we closer to achieving the ideals that our ancestors championed? If so, where do those of us who have been failed by the system fit in?
Yes, I guess the video sharing is done.
The video was just a small attempt by the students of the St. Joseph's College of Law to raise questions pertaining to the relevance of the Constitution in the present socio-economic realities. With this, we have come towards the end of this event. I now invite Professor Gio to present the formal vote of thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Diksha. So good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of St. Joseph's College of Law, the Constitution Club, and Nivaran, I deem it my privilege to propose the vote of thanks for today. First of all, I'd like to thank Director Father Praveen Hridaraj SJ and the Principal Dr. Professor Pratima Prabhakar for their immense support throughout this endeavor in organization to the final execution. So thank you so much. I would especially like to thank Professor Dr. Kancha Ilaya Shepherd for accepting our invitation and gracing this occasion. Thank you so much for your great lecture spanning a broad historical trajectory, exploring the history of the emergence of the idea of equality from different contexts, spanning a lot of millennia. So thank you so much, Professor, for doing that. I would like to specifically thank Professor Pauline Priya for tirelessly working behind this endeavor and making it a success. I'd also like to thank the students who are working tirelessly even today. Soyeb, Diksha, Parikshit, Ruben, Tangam Chandi, Nitin, Prabal, all of them who have completely supported and are still supporting behind making this event a success. So with this, so thank you everyone who have gathered here. So we had close to 200 people watching this live stream in YouTube. So thank you everyone who watched it. And thank you, Professor Kancha Ilaya, again. So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So thank you everyone. We'll end the session now.
No, no, no.